Just Monica. 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 So last time we began covering the creepy hidden mystery of...
You should not have deleted me, Monica. I am still here, and I still want my earring. Long term.
Hello, Internet! Welcome to Game Theory, and my apologies for any technical difficulties we may be having during this series. So in part 1 of this theory, we start to unearth a horror game hidden underneath the cute facade that is Doki Doki Literature Club. We found a letter hidden in plain sight alluding to human experiments and cults, all topics that appear in Yuri's book, The Portrait of Markov, a book that just so happens to have a mysterious eye on the cover. This all led me to concoct a theory that the 4 girls from the club are actually characters from another game. A horror game, in fact, being produced by Team Salvato, and that this is the reason that Monica turned sentient in Doki Doki. Her AI isn't meant to be contained in a mere visual novel game. But today is where things really start to go off the rails as we dive deeper into the Portrait of Markov mystery and cover the game within this game that's itself hiding a third game. Oh yeah, and by the way, if you thought Monica was bad, well then, you should start getting really scared of Yuri. As you'll know if you finish the game, the character files in the game's directory play a huge role in the plot. Monica manipulates and deletes them one by one in her quest to make you love her, and ultimately you have to delete Monica's file in order to reach the game's true ending. But there's more in these files than just character information. Each of them is a puzzle in and of themselves, left in the game to be solved by the fans. And 2 fans of DDLC in particular stepped up to the challenge. Reddit users MitHost and WarChamp7 dug deep into these files and uncovered their secrets, posting their findings to the R Visual Novels subreddit, and the lore bits they uncovered broke the Portrait of Markov mystery wide open. So the character files on your computer start as .chr files, which isn't a real file format that programs can recognize, but that doesn't mean you can't open them. If you use a text editor like Notepad, you can absolutely see what's inside, and that's exactly what they did, with the text inside each file giving them clues as to what they should be doing next. Something about this visual novel makes me go through puberty. Yuri's file was the easiest to crack. It started as a bunch of random letters and numbers, but that pile of letter vomit was actually text encoded in base 64. It's an encoding technique that converts binary data into text, specifically ASCII text, the same stuff that Bob built his army using a few years ago on YouTube. That may sound like it's really hard to decode, but all you have to do is copy it and paste it into a base 64 decoder, like this one right here. When you decrypt Yuri's file, you'll see that it's actually a short story, a creepypasta which the game's director Dan Salvato confirmed that he wrote over 2 years ago and just stuck in the game as an Easter egg. It's a spooky story to be sure, but it seems to be just that, an Easter egg, a red herring. It is nothing compared to everything else hidden in these other character files. Natsuki's file came next, which, when opened in a text editor, gave the clue that this should be opened as a PNG file. Changing the extension resulted in this odd discolored image. But for anyone who's had some experience playing around with Photoshop, this color scheme may remind you of what happens when you invert the colors on a picture. It produces those signature blues and grays. So reversing that inversion, the picture suddenly starts to look like a real picture. And not just any sort of picture, a face. Rotate the image and wrap that texture around a 3D cone, then look at the cone from above, and it turns into an image of a mysterious blonde woman with whited out eyes. This woman doesn't resemble any of the other characters in the game, or anyone talked about by them. So perhaps then she's a character from the other game being developed by Team Salvato. Maybe it's Alyssa, the girl suffering the strange illness that we heard mentioned in the letter found in the last episode. Monica's character file, when converted into a PNG, turns out to be an image of a ring with a square of black and white static in the middle. But that's not just any static, it's a QR code, was what I initially thought, but nope, it's actually way more complicated than that. And huge compliments to the guys on Reddit for solving this one. It's actually binary. Computer language. It's a bunch of ones and zeros, where one number is represented by the color black and the other number is represented by the color white. So what Midhost did was to take those black and white pixels and convert them line by line into strings of binary, then convert that binary sequence into alphanumeric text using an online converter, which resulted in yet another pile of letters and numbers. But these should be starting to look a bit more familiar, right? It's more base 64 code, which, when converted, reveals a note that really starts to bring all this together.
Can you hear me? Who are you? I can't see you, but I know you're there. Yeah, you can definitely hear me. You've been watching for a while now, right? I guess I should introduce myself or something. My name is... Actually, that's stupid. You obviously already know my name. Sorry. Anyway, I'm guessing if you were able to put a stop to this, you would have done it by now. I mean, I know you're not, evil or anything, because you've already helped me so much. I really should thank you for that. For everything you've done. You're really like a friend to me. So, thank you. So much. I think more than anything else, I really don't want it all to be for nothing. Everyone else is dead. Maybe you already know that. I'm sure you do, actually. But it doesn't have to be that way, right? Well, there's a lot of stuff I don't understand. I don't even know if it's possible for me to understand it, but I know that this isn't my only story. I can see that now, really clearly. And I think everyone else has had that same kind of experience. Some kind of deja vu. It's the third eye, right? Anyway, I could be totally wrong about this, but I really think you might be able to do something. I think you might be able to go back, or however you want to put it, to go back and tell them what's going to happen. If they know ahead of time, then they should be able to avoid it. They should. If they remember their time with me in the other worlds, they should remember what I tell them. Yeah, I really think this might be possible, but it's up to you. I'm sorry for always being so, never mind. I know that's wrong. This is my story. It's time to be an epic hero. Both of us. 2018!
Wow, that is a lot to unpack, so let's get to it. First, it seems pretty clear that this was written by Monica, as evidenced by the "you've been watching me for a while now" and "you already know my name" lines. It also seems to be written after Doki Doki's true ending, where she destroys the game. Notice how she comments that there's something you as a player can't stop, something that's killed everyone else, which is why she destroyed the game in the first place. But now come the bizarre parts. She says that she's experienced some sort of deja vu and that this isn't her only story, supporting the idea that she's coming from somewhere else, perhaps, once again, a different game. And it's not just her either, it's all four of them. Quote, everyone else has had the same kind of experience. What's most exciting though is her suggesting that perhaps we as the player can, quote, go back and tell them what's going to happen. If they know ahead of time, they should be able to avoid it, meaning that we're gonna be tasked with trying to jog their memories, or that in this new game there'll be some sort of Easter egg calling back to the events of Doki Doki. Quote, if they remember their time with me in other worlds. Other worlds, like other games that these characters have been used in. That maybe we can do something in these other games to warn the girls and prevent Doki Doki from ever happening in the first place. And the conclusion is pretty much the most blatant. Team Salvato has another game coming in 2018, and in this game, Monica isn't the villain. She's the hero. Of everything in Monica's letter, though, one reference in particular really stands out, blaming this deja vu on what she calls the third eye. And it's not just Monica either. This third eye is hidden throughout your time with the literature club. During Act 2, you're always given 2 regular poems. Once the game starts to break, the first poem that Natsuki gives you is a string of random letters and numbers, which at this point we're old pros at decoding. Using base 64, the text reveals a creepy hidden poem titled Open Your Third Eye, which describes the narrator taking pleasure in stabbing someone to death. The second poem that Yuri gives you seems, at first glance, to be a huge block of random words, but hidden in plain sight at the end of it is another ominous passage that describes a compulsive stabbing and concludes with the line, quote, the lust continues to linger through my veins. An ache in my muscles stems from the unreleased tension experienced by my entire body. Her third eye is drawing me closer. That's 3 characters now who've brought up this third eye. The same eye that happens to be described on the cover of the portrait of Markov. And remember what Yuri said about the plot of the book last episode. All the people trapped in the human experiments at the religious camp have this trait that turns them into killing machines that lust for blood. That trait is undeniably the third eye. All of this points to Team Salvato's new game being about human experimentation, researching a psychic phenomenon that invokes uncontrollable bloodlust in the people exposed to it. Which brings us to the last piece of the puzzle, Sayori's character file, which is by far the trickiest to decipher. In order to unlock its secrets, you need to convert it into an OGG audio file, which sounds like a lot of random noise at first. But when you open that audio in a visualizer program and then apply a spectrograph to that visualization, you reveal a QR code that, when scanned, takes you to the website projectlibitina.com. Whew, that is a ton of work just to reach a page of plain text. But the information contained within that text is eye-opening. Third eye-opening, that is. The page is an examination report dated January 5th, 2004, which describes horrifying experiments being performed on a 3-year-old psychic girl with the first name Libitina. Her last name is left blank. Another blank name appears at the bottom of the page, another subject who was terminated earlier. Based on the context of the redacted poem we covered last episode, it's my guess that this girl is Alyssa. Even the number of letters in Alyssa match the number of redacted letters in the name. That's far from the only parallel to the portrait of Markov that we see here, though. A note to the head doctor at the bottom of the page reads, quote, "You are choosing to avoid the measures necessary to prevent a repeat scenario, Doctor. Will you not have as much faith in your personnel as you do in your God?" End quote. Yuri says that the book is set in a religious camp that was turned into a human experiment prison, which lines up pretty well with this mysterious doctor's reported devotion to a god of some kind, and the redacted poem's allusion to joining this mysterious family. Judging from the various notes on this webpage, the tests performed on the 3-year-old were all about activating Libitina's third eye, that lust for blood, which proved successful, but then, based on the failed test results, Libitina is then unable to suppress. But not only are we getting more and more clues as to the next game Team Salvato is working on, we're actually seeing exactly how our favorite clubmates are gonna fit into the story, because I am confident 3-year-old Libitina grows up to be one of the 4 girls we see in Doki Doki Literature Club. And what's more, I can prove exactly which one it is. Libitina is a 3-year-old, and her height and weight are both average for her age, so there's not much to go on there. But if we look a bit further down the page, we see a list of noted behaviors that the researchers say should be ignored in future examinations. Twitching, vocal tics, biting, euphoria, vomiting, screaming, harm to examiner, harm to self, misplaced laughter. There's one character who we see display almost all of these traits during Doki Doki Literature Club, particularly in that second act, Yuri. Once the game bugs out, Yuri's dialogue becomes the most erratic. We repeatedly see her eyes twitching when she talks to us, she screams a fair bit, laughs erratically at a few points, and that bit about self-harm? Hell, I don't think I need to explain that one. But these aren't the only clues that we have to go on. There are 2 more things that absolutely confirm that Yuri is Libitina. The first is her age. Libitina was born January 5th, 2001, which would make her 17 years old in 2018, the year that Project Libitina is set to release. As the only member of the Literature Club in senior year, Yuri is the only one of the girls in the right age range to be Libitina. But there's also one more piece of crucial evidence that absolutely clinches this theory, and the evidence isn't found in the game itself, or even in its data, or a random hidden webpage, but rather in the Doki Doki Literature Club merchandise store. Yeah! This guy is hiding clues in more places than Scott Cawthon. Team Salvato might not be offering much in terms of merch items, but the few items that are present reveal some very interesting details. So let's look at the posters. 4 of them are simply CG of each girl taken straight from the game. Nothing too exciting there. Another 4 are creepy original artwork featuring iconic quotes from the characters. Between all of these, there's this running motif of the girls being tied up in a red string. Even Monica has a bow wrapped around her, but Yuri doesn't seem to possess these strings. In fact, all of the red strings seem to be emerging from her heart, from this flower, whatever this is, ensnaring all the other girls. An allusion to Libitina's psychic influence over everyone else. But if that doesn't convince you, there are 2 more posters for sale featuring original artwork. One of these is a surprisingly cute picture of Monica handing you the song she sings you at the end of the game. It's cute. It's very cute. The last poster, called Yuri Unhinged, is a bit different. And when I say a bit different, I mean completely different from anything else in the game or on the site. It shows the quiet bookworm Yuri sitting in the classroom at sunset, toying with a knife. For someone unhinged, her posture seems oddly relaxed, even confident. In fact, it's the most confident we've ever seen her, like she's in full control of the situation. And behind her, we see all sorts of ominous text scrawled on the blackboard. And to her right, we see a poster with a big ol' Illuminati confirmed eye in the middle and the words "Help me" scribbled along the top. This is the third eye, Yuri's third eye, and this is the only artwork where we see it depicted. Illuminati confirmed, Yuri as Libitina confirmed. Doki Doki Literature Club isn't just a free game made to promote Team Salvato's upcoming horror title, it's a part of Project Libitina. Monica is the upcoming game's protagonist, while Yuri is the monster at the center of the story, Libitina herself. This is why Yuri was so attached to the Portrait of Markov story. It is her story, and the disconnect from being put in the wrong game is the reason that Monica becomes self-aware. But hey, that's game theory.
Warning: this review is about an adults-only visual novel which was not intended for a conventional audience. The themes of this visual novel could definitely be upsetting to you. In the anime community, there are certain animations that are so infamous that everyone is aware of them. I am not a particularly big anime fan and don't even read many mangas or visual novels, but even I am aware of some of these infamous animes that exist out there. Whether you watch those animes alone or with friends, they are considered a challenge someone must go through and survive. Some of these infamous animes are Boku no Pico, a homosexual pedo hentai series I had the displeasure of watching, Genocyber, an ultra-violent animation which seems to contain senseless violence and suffering, which I did watch and tried to enjoy at least, and lastly the thing I will be talking about in this video, Euphoria, an eroge and hentai that pushed many buttons. I heard many rumors of this hentai animation years ago, and one day I gave into my curiosity and seeked out the first episode. From what I saw, it was quite clear from the beginning that this was not your standard romance anime. Euphoria's setting seems to be a mix of various horror movies and death game visual novels, of which its biggest inspiration clearly is the movie Saw. Now I need to make a quick distinction between the hentai and the visual novel. Euphoria is best experienced with the visual novel, not the animation. The animation tries to summarize the entire plot of Euphoria with a lot of liberties, and kind of fails miserably. It might be worth a watch if you are a legit fan of the series or want a little taste of Euphoria's twisted world, but I will tell you right now, you might not find any enjoyment in it at all, or might struggle to make sense of a plot that is going on behind the scenes. Adding insult to injury, the animation quality drops significantly throughout the episodes, with episode 1 and 2 having very good animations, and the rest having your standard hentai quality. The visual novel goes much more into details, and if you pay attention throughout the whole thing, you will be able to piece together what the novel actually is about. While you can skip any sexual scene that you are uncomfortable with without missing any plot details, I would still recommend you to stick with it regardless. In the end, Euphoria is a horror experience, just that it is way more sexual than your typical horror movie, and being uncomfortable definitely is part of the overall experience of this novel. But keep in mind, it's not intended for a vanilla audience. and may be more enjoyable if you like a variety of BDSM activities, or at least don't have a problem with them. Unlike other reviews that over-dramatize their experiences and fearmonger how traumatizing this visual novel or anime is, this review will be much different.
This game is not safe for life!
I think any piece of media in the realms of legality and fiction should have a right to exist. Even media that is at parts as uncomfortable to view as Euphoria is. If you say and believe that you are traumatized by some drawings, you should maybe not watch this video. So you can stomach some really fringe and sometimes even disgusting depictions, then be my guest. The characters of Euphoria have some nice variety and have their own personalities and quirks, including the protagonist Keisuke Takato, who has an amazing character development throughout all of the arcs present in the game, Kanae Hokari, the childhood friend of Keisuke, Nemu Manaka, the antagonist who teases, blackmails and provocates Keisuke throughout the game, Rika Makiba, who is most definitely underaged and is by design the most annoying and obnoxious character, Rin Byakuya, a mysterious doll-like character that is way more important than you might think, Natsuki Aoi, who is a teacher from the school all the characters attend, and last but not least, the class president, Miyako Ando, who gets violently electrocuted right at the beginning of the novel. My favorite characters include Nemu Manaka, Rin Byakuya, and Keisuke Takato. Before I get into details about the story though, I want to elaborate further on the visuals of this novel. I really do enjoy the design of every single character. If you are familiar with other visual novels like Clannad, characters sometimes can tend to look very samey. This is not the case in Euphoria. The design of every character reflects their personality perfectly, and the art style is very clean and appealing, for the most part. Since Euphoria is a horror experience, the artists really didn't shy away from creating some of the most disgusting screens in the novel. And honestly, as much as I do not like to look at them, they do add to the experience. The art is appealing and unappealing at the appropriate times, and certain scenes really can make you feel quite sick. And not many movies, games, and especially books can invoke such feelings. On top of that, the sound design is really well made. The sounds may not be realistic at times, but they are mostly believable. Sometimes a bit too believable. The voice acting also is very good, and the actors fit the characters' personalities perfectly. On top of that, the music in this visual novel is very fitting and sounds very good, even when looped for a while, which will happen a lot, since the scenes are quite long for the most part. Regarding the visual novel's mechanics themselves, you can choose at different parts of the game which path you will go down in the story, and of course in the first part of the game you can choose the character you want to culturally enrich next. There are visual novels out there that have more mechanics at hand and give the reader way more control, but frankly, Euphoria does not need that in the slightest. Now with the technical and artistic stuff out of the way, let us focus on the meat of this review. The plot of the novel. Be warned, from this point on I will spoil the entire plot of the novel, and if you want to experience it yourself and be as surprised as I was, please skip to this time in the video to hear my conclusions and thoughts on the novel. It is highly recommended that you first experience the game for yourself. The novel's story is split up into different parts. The first game, the one that includes snuggles with struggles. The second game, or simply put the death game. The school segments, the laboratory segments, and last but not least, the actual real world. Simply put, the majority of the game, and depending on the arc you choose, the entirety of the game, takes place in a simulation, meaning everything that is happening in the game is not happening in the real world. But Keisuke, the protagonist, remembers very well what happens in the simulation after he escapes it, in the true ending. More on that later. In the very beginning, the characters wake up in a weird facility and question where they are and what is going to happen to them. A voice through the speaker system then announces that the students and the teacher became participants of a cruel game that they must take part in. If someone resists to take part in the game, it will result in a game over for them. The class president refuses to take part and thus she vanishes from the room. Upon entering a room that has just opened up, the remaining participants are forced to witness the violent passing of the class president. After her death, it is revealed that Keisuke really enjoyed seeing her die. Nemu, knowing of Keisuke's secret, blackmails him and demands him to fulfill 3 of her wishes. If he doesn't comply, his secret won't be that secret anymore. But later on it is revealed that even if he goes against Nemu's wishes, she will not spill the beans. An announcement played in the main room where the game is explained in detail. To finish the game successfully, the participants have to open 5 doors to win, and to open a door, the key, Keisuke, must choose the keyhole, any of the other participants, to open the door according to the instructions given. When the keyhole is chosen, both the key and keyhole enter a room where everything that happens is broadcasted in the main room of the facility. What happens next are a variety of fun activities, including Subway sandwiches and lots of cream. The novel even features a variety of instructional potty training scenes and diving lessons. In all seriousness, you will be doing quite some damage to the participants you choose. The more you choose the same participant, the more intense the tasks get, becoming more and more sadistic and further derange Keisuke in his sadistic nature, while the relationship between him and the participant he chose complicates even more. During the first game, depending on the character arc you chose, you reveal more and more information about certain characters, the facility, the gray areas of the rules that were set up, and even the existence of the bonus games. After repeatedly choosing one participant, Keisuke and the chosen participant have the chance of winning a stay in the luxurious room Makiba really wants to be in herself, annoying you in every single character arc, saying how cool this room is and that she really wants to be inside it. Eventually, you will get into the luxurious room after the second bonus game because Nemu cockblocks you the first time around and stays in the luxurious room with Makiba to influence and manipulate her. Once you are in the room, you further advance the relationship between yourself and the participant you chose to stick with. At this point, the character's shift in personality may or may not start happening depending on the arc. After Makiba's stay in the luxurious room, in most cases she will be completely influenced by Nemu and acts really strangely towards the protagonist. After the final involuntary key insertion, the final door has opened and it's not over yet. Now the second part of the game begins. The death game. If Keisuke's shift did not start happening in the luxurious room, it definitely will start happening now. In the death game, every character except Keisuke is trapped and will die if Keisuke doesn't step in and rescue them. At this point, the protagonist will be mentally broken after experiencing the presumed death of his teacher, and he tries his best to save the rest of the group. During the death game, Nemu also starts showing tenderness here and there after Keisuke rescued her, being worried for him when he gets stabbed to save her, tending to his wounds carefully, and even singing Twinkle Twinkle Little Star to him. Actions that just don't make a lot of sense regarding this manipulative and evil character. After saving every other character, the survivors manage to open the vault together and escape the facility. Keisuke though faints and loses his consciousness due to his injuries, and wakes up later in an underground shelter with the character he chose repeatedly before. While escaping the facility and while residing in the shelter, Keisuke reflects on his actions, his true motivations, his found love for the person he only used to fulfill his sadistic desires with, and his change, slowly but surely, seems to turn for the better. This is the point where the game opens up and becomes drastically different depending on which character you chose. What always stays the same in every arc though, is that the school the surviving participants studied in became hell on earth. Hordes of students rape and abuse their fellow female students and even keep them locked up in cages. The sadistic nature of the games is never lost throughout the progression of the simulation. The target of the mental and physical stress, though, changes throughout the games. Keisuke starts off abusing and mentally tearing apart his victims in the first game. During the death game, though, Keisuke himself becomes the target of physical damage and mental stress. He wouldn't be able to save his friends if he would not be willing to give his life for them in the first place. But in the school, it is way different. Keisuke is confronted with his inner demons throughout this chapter. His integrity is questioned, his partner is abused by other people, and he is subjected to the pain and embarrassment his partner feels. For the first time, Keisuke gets a taste of his own methods, and in turn, he changes as a person during this time of mental and physical abuse and stress. But if he changes for the better or worse, is entirely up to you. The true ending, which I will explain in further detail now, unlocks when Nemu angers Keisuke to the point of tragedy. Keisuke strangles Nemu to death, snapping her neck, and thus the simulation ends. What makes the story elements much more interesting though, is that little hints from the real world trickle into the simulation. Most importantly, Keisuke relives memories of him first meeting his childhood friend, but also other things. He remembers a very grim event that took place in their school in the real world. But he is not the only person that remembers things that happened and that are currently happening. Two characters especially are very conscious about what is happening in the game and why it takes place. Kanae and Nemu. In fact, they are both key characters and the reason why this hell was brought onto Keisuke in the first place. Kanae and Nemu are aware of what is happening to them. Not only Keisuke feels and remembers everything that is happening in the simulation, but also Kanae and Nemu. While the things happening to them aren't real, they feel convincingly real, and this in turn damages them mentally to the point where even after the simulation is over, they are completely broken due to the things that took place in the virtual hell they experienced. Well, two of them are. Of course, Keisuke, who was completely broken throughout the game by both becoming an abuser and receiving mental and physical abuse throughout the games. The other character must be the innocent and good-hearted Kanae, right? Surprisingly, outside the simulation, she doesn't seem to mind what happened to her and to you. She even seems to dislike you very much. At this point, it becomes obviously clear. Kanae wasn't your childhood friend. Nemu was. In reality, Kanae is a scientist working at the facility you and your childhood friend are trapped in. When exploring the facility, Keisuke faces a horrifying sight. Rine, immobilized and turned into a machine of sorts, crying out to Keisuke. Throughout different arcs, it is revealed that Rine is Keisuke's daughter. How that came to be is a rather confusing tale, which is explained in great detail in Rine's character arc and in the main route of the game. In the true ending, you find Rine in a miserable state, bound to a machine, unable to escape, or to be rescued, or to live on her own. A horrible situation for Keisuke, who has no other choice than leaving his daughter behind. The simulation and everything that happened in it was due to a bet Nemu and Kanae agreed to after Kanae endangered Keisuke's life during a death battle. If Keisuke kills Kanae during the simulation, Kanae would win control over Keisuke and wouldn't allow him to leave the facility or the simulation. But if Nemu is killed by Keisuke, he will be granted his life and may walk away from the grim simulation. In order for the game to work, the personalities of Nemu and Kanae are switched. While Kanae still feels disdain for Keisuke and while Nemu in turn still loves Keisuke in the simulation, Kanae acts as Keisuke's childhood friend, while Nemu acts like a sadistic and malevolent person. What makes Nemu work for the entirety of the game is that you will notice inconsistencies throughout the novel. As I mentioned before, Nemu seems to care about Keisuke. She seems to also be horrified at the things that are happening to her, even if she says otherwise after the unspeakable things Keisuke subjects her to. Kanae is the real malevolent and truly sadistic character here, messing with Keisuke's memories, implanting sadistic thoughts into him so he commits horrible acts of violence, and even taunting him after exiting the simulation while he is in a broken state of mind. In the real world, it is revealed that she is a rotten and cold human being, and I honestly did not see it coming. Even after Nemu beats Kanae, Kanae will still try to trap Keisuke in the simulation. Keisuke meets Nemu in the simulation once again, and Nemu gives him a choice. Keisuke can live in paradise with her forever in the simulation. A choice that seems bittersweet. Would you rather live alongside the person you love in a lifelong lie? Or would you live in reality and risk never seeing your love again? A tough choice, choosing between a fake paradise and the tough and cold real world. Keisuke promises Nemu that he will come back to get her and leaves the simulation once more and goes out in the real world. He seeks out the teacher of the school he attended, Natsuki Aoi, but finds out that she is a spy or agent of sorts that worked for the facility he was kept in. She doesn't even know Keisuke personally, but is willing to train him so he can confront Kanae on his own, bring her down, and rescue his childhood friend, Nemu. Keisuke revisits the school building he studied in and finds a clue that leads him to Kanae. It turns out that she was a double agent and betrayed 2 research facilities at once by kidnapping Nemu. Keisuke pursues Kanae and finds her bleeding out on the floor in a building and dead mercenaries. Kanae saved Nemu, but for what reason is unknown. In the end, Keisuke finally finds Nemu. She still remembers him, but due to the trauma, because of the things she has been through, she mentally regressed and needs to recover to the damage that was done. Keisuke finally found Nemu, and the novel ends. A hopeful ending for one of the most dramatic and horrifying love stories I have ever read. So, with the true ending summarized with lots of details missing, there are some questions left unanswered. What does the facility actually do? Why are Nemu and Rene important for the facility? What does Keisuke have to do with the facility at all? And most importantly of all, if the true ending displays the actual ending of the game, are the other endings worth reading at all? Yes. Yes, they are. Every route you can choose reveals more information about certain characters, details about the research facility, and more information on the character you choose to stick with. Out of all the character routes, 3 are absolutely essential to play to understand the entirety of the plot. The character route of Nemu unlocks the Kanae route, which is needed for the true ending. During the Nemu route, you find out that there is more to Nemu than meets the eye, especially during the ending, when Keisuke is unable to kill Nemu because he remembered something about her that made him stop. It is a very powerful moment when Nemu is seen crying over Keisuke's body, after he presumably was stabbed in the back. The route of Rene shows a side of the school that wasn't really explored before. Rene in the simulation is a leader of a cult that goes against Nemu's tyrannical rule. The cult is filled with maniacs that want to reach paradise by enduring every sort of pain that is thrown at them, chanting, "Sufferance on the surface is our sustenance, through difficulties to honors, through hardships to paradise." They praise a mummified corpse belonging to the woman that raped Keisuke, who in turn birthed Rine, and due to Keisuke resisting this cult, he is imprisoned. Rine is obsessed about birthing a child that can be a messiah, and sees Keisuke as the chosen one. She cannot be the messiah, but desires to be one simultaneously. A truly messed up side that was unexplored in the other routes, but definitely worth reading to fully understand the relationship between Rine, Keisuke, and the woman that birthed Rine. Rika's and Natsuki's roots are the less important ones, and in my opinion have very unsatisfying endings. When Keisuke chooses anyone other than Kanae or Nemu, neither of them die, and thus neither Nemu nor Kanae wins the bet. It could be that Keisuke and his companion were released from the facility, leaving Nemu to suffer till the end of her days, or Keisuke is still trapped in a simulation after not being able to fulfill the bet's condition. My theory is that since no conclusion was made during the endings, the simulation resets and starts all over again. Even when reading through Nemu's roads, Keisuke is not able to kill Nemu, and thus the bet's conditions are unfulfilled. The only route that enables Keisuke to either kill Nemu or Kanae is the true route, or in other words, Kanae's route. With Nemu's death, Keisuke is freed. With Kanae's death though, he will be forever trapped in the simulation, becoming a monster that is only driven by his twisted desires. The roots also explain the other questions I have asked before. For one, what does this research facility do, and what have Rine and Nemu got to do with it? The name of the visual novel does hint at what the facility tries to achieve. They build machines which let very wealthy people live a life in endless bliss and, you guessed it, euphoria. For the machine to work, Nemu and Rine are needed to keep the machine running. Their suffering and longing for paradise make the machine work, and without them, paradise cannot be achieved for the people using the facility's machines. Kanae instigated a death game at the school Keisuke and the others attended. This happened so Kanae could break Nemu's will to live in the real world, so she can become the Sleeping Beauty, the core part that makes people's life in paradise possible. Every experiment, be it death games or everything Keisuke and the others experienced, happened for the entertainment of others, betting on who would survive or die. Every student at the academy is only a mere test subject. They are experimented with until there is no use for them anymore. And lastly, they get harvested for their organs. Every character in the story has something to do with the facility. Kanae's parents were very cruel scientists that worked in said facility and restricted Nemu, who allegedly is a clone, to reside in the facility. One day, Nemu found Keisuke's cave when she and the mother of Kanae escaped the facility for an unknown reason. They both went outside the cave and looked at the stars. Keisuke then taught Nemu the song Twinkle Twinkle Little Star and told her about all his hopes and dreams. At some point, the researchers found out that Keisuke had contact with Nemu, and they gave Nemu a choice after they captured them. Either she wipes his memory of her, or he dies. Keisuke was hospitalized, but shortly after, the hospital was burned down and he was kidnapped and brought into the same facility Nemu resided in. In this experiment, everything centered around a cult, led by a woman called Dear Leader, who had a child that due to a sexual development disorder was neither a boy nor a girl. She believed the researchers were messengers from God, and thus they took advantage of her and told her the following was the message from God. Sufferance on the surface is our sustenance, through difficulties to honors, through hardships to paradise. The same message Renee and her followers repeated throughout in the simulation. At this time, the leader became pregnant, and Keisuke was the father. The leader wanted the child to develop as fast as possible, due to it being the Messiah God sent her. The researchers took the fertilized egg of the woman and conducted a gene experiment on the asexual child she birthed before. The asexual child, due to this experiment, was turned into a female and was handed back to the mother, who considered her a failure, because a Messiah must be a boy. After the researchers planted a virus in the Coles level of the facility, everyone succumbed to it, aside from the failed Messiah. The failed Messiah is Byakuya. This novel has quite a bit of depth, and I appreciate it because of that so much more. Many details are left vague and are up to interpretation. Right or wrong interpretations don't really exist. So here are some of my thoughts I have come up with after reading and analyzing the story. Everything in Euphoria has to do with the achievement of happiness. The individual characters all have an own sense of happiness, most importantly regarding the main characters presented throughout the novel. Kanae is a sadist who finds enjoyment in the death and pain of others. Nemu believes since her childhood that the world is beautiful and wants to be together with Keisuke since the day she first met him. Keisuke is her lifeline, and when he is gone, she will not be willing to stay in the real world, and most likely would surrender to become the next Sleeping Beauty. Keisuke is a bit different though. He doesn't know what fulfills him for the most part of the novel. His sadistic nature in the simulation was most likely implanted by Kanae, regarding that Keisuke was a seemingly normal person like the rest of the participants. Keisuke at first thinks that his carnal desires of inflicting pain and terror towards women are what he genuinely believes, but during the course of the story, it is quite evident that he just wants his normal life back, with his true love by his side. Rinne's ideal source of happiness would be to finally become the Messiah her mother so desperately wanted her to be. She so desperately wants to be the Messiah that she even is willing to sacrifice her biological father in the simulation. She just wants to be seen as useful in the eyes of her mother, a goal that tragically cannot be fulfilled. The research facility has a way shallower idea of bliss. The scientists and patrons of the facility want to either live in fabricated worlds based on the Sleeping Beauty's dreams to escape their reality and avoid the troubles in life, or enjoy themselves by watching innocent people commit horrible acts of violence against each other. The patrons and scientists are willing to destroy hundreds of lives for their own amusement. You could say that they play around with their victims as if they were rag dolls, little playthings you can damage and throw around and watch them hit the wall and slide down without having a sense of guilt and consequence. Every idea of happiness presented, if reasonable, demented, or wishful, correlates to one question this novel repeatedly asks you. How much are you willing to sacrifice for your happiness? This question especially applies to Keisuke. If he decides to use and abuse his partner for his sadistic desires, the relationship between them would be a morphed and twisted one. Keisuke would not be able to control his sadism, and he might become a far more dangerous person than he already was before. On the other hand, when Keisuke finally realizes that he needs Nemu in his life, his worldview changes. He doesn't care about his sadistic side anymore, which was fabricated by Kanae from the start. He only wants a normal life with Nemu, and he is willing to go through a lot of trouble to achieve that goal, even if he has to kill Kanae, the woman who instigated the bet in the first place. Euphoria was the first visual novel I have read. Yeah, I know, quite a rough start. I started reading the visual novel out of a joke. I thought it would be senseless and messed up. While I am not a sadist and don't enjoy quite a few of the scenes that happen in Euphoria, I decided to stick with it because of how the novel progressed. At a certain point, there has been a shift. I was hooked. I was invested. I was touched by what was presented to me. A protagonist who is self-aware to the actions he is committing, desperately wanting his life back. Twisted games that don't seem to have an end, and if they do, a new one that is even worse starts. The characters develop and complicate, and Keisuke fights with his inner demons constantly until one of the many resolutions the novel offers. If you are a horror fan and can stomach really touchy themes and confronting imagery, I highly suggest you this novel. I think I only reviewed this visual novel for a couple of simple reasons. While at first I wanted to only get a chuckle from extremely confronting scenes, I actually got invested and developed interest for the story that was going on behind the scenes and for the individual characters. The writing convinced me. This is good. Very good. Yes, it may be confronting and sometimes barely watchable, but in the end I thought it was very worth it. Sadly though, most people write it off as a senseless novel without any meaning, without any thought put into it. Especially many YouTubers that watched the horrible anime adaptation of the novel or read the visual novel without any research into what it actually is, fearmongered their audience into not checking this visual novel out at any costs. Of course, everyone is opinionated and can share his opinion, but you can also make a review about something or share an opinion that is not entirely true. There was an effort put into creating this visual novel. And there is a meaning behind the chaos. But now let us look at something a little different now. Violent media in general. Be honest, you love blood and guts. Most likely many of your games include shooting, brawling, and other kinds of things that are bad for any human's health. We always were obsessed with blood and violence. Most of our top-rated movies, the colossally popular games, the interesting novels we read, hell, even the music we consume tends to be violent. I am not innocent in this matter too. My favorite movies include Akira, Perfect Blue, and Pulp Fiction, and music-wise I would consider Pink Floyd's The Wall a masterpiece of music because of its detailed showcase and description of a man whose psyche gets destroyed from his childhood onwards. My favorite games feature violence as well, and I would be a complete hypocrite to demonize others for consuming violent media. But my point is that there is a certain double standard, or at least a certain threshold on what we deem acceptable in media. Nowadays, anything goes. Physical abuse, mental abuse, and even something so trivial but powerful like embarrassment is acceptable.
Hey, want to hear the most annoying sound in the world?
But as soon as the violence becomes sexual, we immediately have a problem with it. When watching movies with friends, families, or even alone, it is never the violent scenes that make me and many others uncomfortable. It is always a sexual scene, even if it's only implied and consensual. This double standard is even expanded into territories where it gets very questionable. In a video game or movie, we see certain characters as badass, cool, and witty, while the characters themselves oftentimes are cold-blooded killers, sadistic maniacs, or flawed average people. We tend to see them as something better than they actually are. because their actions aren't that bad compared to others and the context of the game and story is always kept in mind. But when we see a rapist in a game, novel or movie, the situation changes. Of course we should dislike people that abuse any other person sexually, and this also is translated in media as well. Certain things like sexual violence make us very uncomfortable. You empathize, it's touchy, it's troubling. You feel vulnerable. You start feeling for the victims and maybe even grow a large distaste for a fictional character that doesn't even exist. You don't see any context that is provided. You simply do not care. Why don't we act like that when confronted with characters like Carl Johnson, Hannibal Lecter, or the skinhead from American History X? Sure, those people are horrible, but, in our opinion, not that horrible. If Euphoria was a visual novel that didn't belong to an eroge but to a death game manga, anime, or visual novel, it wouldn't be that infamous. I would even suggest that it could have been a cult classic. The story sadly is unfortunate enough that it belongs to a novel that is sexual, violent, and sadistic in nature. The good scenes, the overall qualities, and the genuinely heart-touching moments are buried under a mountain of embarrassment and disdain. I would actually compare Euphoria to the Serbian film in a way. While the Serbian film isn't nearly as graphic as Euphoria at parts, since it is not a pornographic movie, it does feature quite intense scenes and a stomach-turning premise, and it revolves around sexual themes. The movie is a big, bold metaphor about the Serbian people, getting used and abused, violated by the state from birth up until they die. The movie is very confronting and makes the protagonist do some of the most horrible crimes. Serbian film became infamous. It is called senseless, sick, and twisted, but people don't want to look deeper into it. It just is way too touchy. Is this double standard really fair? Are cold-blooded killers really better than rapists and sexual harassers? I think not at all. Murderers end lives, while rapists destroy them. None of these outcomes are good or better than the other. So why don't we judge the majority of fictional characters on the same standards?
Soul making, sound shaking, earth quaking, change.
I have to get something off my chest. I didn't actually own Euphoria for a long while. I only bought it recently, because when I first played through the game, I couldn't actually buy it. For one, I was 17, so I was too young to buy it, and I couldn't buy it because I didn't own a debit card or PayPal. After reading through the entire game, I felt very guilty. I played through it, I enjoyed it, I didn't buy it. But when I thought about the game again and decided to write a review of it, I immediately went to mangagamer.com, bought the game, and redeemed my sins. Manga Gamer localize and translate various visual novels that otherwise would never come out in the West. Euphoria being one of those visual novels. This is a Japanese company that enables us Westerners to experience some good visual novels. And they brought you many novels aside from Euphoria, including the chapters of Higurashi no Naku Koroni, Eden, and so many other great novels to read. Aside from Manga Gamer's localization efforts, they also try their best to release their products completely uncensored. So if you do want to read an eroge, you better buy it at mangagamer.com. This is not a sponsored ad, by the way, I just had a great experience with the website. When I first made an account and tried to buy Euphoria, I couldn't actually pay for it. The website only accepts debit cards, which I don't possess. So I decided to write an email to their support address, detailing that I want to buy Euphoria but only can pay with PayPal. About a day later, they already responded, asking for my PayPal and Manga Gamer email addresses. And after providing those, they set up a direct payment. The day after I paid, I got 4,500 Manga Gamer points on my account, which can be used to buy games. Then I finally could get my hands on the visual novel I so desperately wanted, downloaded it, and started reading it again. Thank you, Manga Gamer, for enabling me to buy this visual novel. And on top of that, some of their products are completely DRM free, like Euphoria is, meaning unlimited downloads and no authorization needed for playing the game. A much appreciated commodity that should be a standard for everyone today.